All right. Well, welcome everybody. And instead of doing just kind of a typical prayer, I think that it was kind of a desire for us to be able to be in prayer, just to be in silence. So I want to encourage you just to, in any way possible that you would like, whether your eyes are open or closed, it does not matter, but to simply focus all of who you are on the presence of our God that is with us right here and right now in this moment. Not a moment in the past, not a moment in the future, but right here and right now. Let us pray. Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy. Amen.
Amen.
I have a question about meditations during that silence, because I was thinking about a lot of stuff and I wasn't supposed to be thinking, so I was feeling really guilty about all this stuff I was thinking
That's
about.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Don't feel guilty. Let's
But
never
so there's like voices in the background. There's some church bells ringing. Like, it was super cool. The breeze, like, and like I like listened to them and like let them go. But then I was like, are you supposed to like concentrate on your breathing? Like, because it feels like my mind needs to go somewhere. And when I focus on my breathing, that's pretty easy. And when I look, like I see like kind of like light, or I see something, I can kind of focus my gaze on that, like whatever, and focus my attention on the breathing. Is that what you're supposed to do, or how are you supposed to do that?
Well, I mean, you're doing everything that I would ever expect for you to do, except for the guilt part. Don't feel guilty. There's no wrong way of doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not getting that. I'm not getting away from the guilt part. That's there. That's there no matter what.
That's all self-imposed. We gotta make sure that you know you're loved.
That's right.
Beyond
That's right.
anything that needs guilt. But honestly, I exactly what you said. I mean, that's a very super common thing, is to focus on the breathing. Some people like to encourage you to focus on feeling where your body is touching either the floor or the chair you're in, and those touching points.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes people like, it all kind of depends on who you are and just kind of what you are kind of like into. Some people are very visual, and so they need to focus on a flame. Some people are audio; they want to focus on a bell or something like that. But honestly, I let everyone to kind of feel out who they are. I mean, everyone's different. Everyone's pretty amazingly beautiful in my eyes and loved. And so I tell them that if there is something that you can let go of, then do that. But if you need to stick with it, if your brain is just going and you haven't had any time to just kind of allow it to kind of rest, then let it go. Like, let's let it go until it does get a little bit tired. to where you can be able to drop some stuff off. And then you can really be able to focus on God. And that's why, just like we were talking about last time, Todd, when you're running, like that's part of the beauty of running, that's that high that you're feeling. Not only obviously physiologically you get a high from running, endorphins and such, but I think there's a spiritual piece to it that, you know, is tied. I'm a monist, so I don't have there is no like complete separation between mind, body, and spirit for me. I think that we're all together. We're all one thing. And so in my theology, and so I just think that they're all connected in some way. So but that's what I normally tell people is just, you let your mind wander. It's okay. And if you need to kind of play out that wandering over there, and then, you know, your brain says squirrel, and then you just go over there, that's okay too, you know, like, then just go look at a squirrel. Who cares? It's okay. There's no wrong way of doing it, man, that I know. I mean, I know it's just my personal thoughts on it, but John, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, you know, it depending upon the specific discipline you're doing, even within the umbrella of sort of silent disciplines or silence, like there's really different guidance on that and instructions depending upon the particular discipline. I mean, sometimes, you know, there sort of are answers to that, Todd. I mean, for me, it's, you know, because DG didn't give us instructions and he knows what he's doing, then that means that's an invitation to do, and that's exactly what you said, DG, right? It's however you respond. Like it's a wide open invitation. You know, if you're with a decent guide, which and I mean I'm lumping DG into that. If you're with a decent guide and they want something out of you, they should tell you. Like if there is a specific instruction in the discipline, like a decent guide will tell you, hey, in this practice of silence, here's what we're, you know, going for or trying to do. And then if there's not that, then it really is a very broad invitation. And I think both are really good. I mean, both are good. You know, it's good to have just silence that's sort of, right, general, you know, however you want to find yourself in that.
Yeah. I think that's the other thing too, is a lot of people want to, they want to be told what to do. And some people need that, but then some people want to be told. And to me, in some cases, and like I said, there's a time for all this stuff. There's a time to mourn. There's a time. I'm going to go Old Testament on everybody, but I mean, there you go, exactly. But I think that there's not very many people have spent enough time attempting to listen to what the presence of God is in that single moment, that they feel lost. And so I usually tell people that it's okay to feel lost. Not all those who wander are lost, as Tolkien would put it through Gandalf. Like it's not a bad thing, but I also know that to be able to say, to focus and do the best you can to simply focus on the presence of God, God's presence happens in billions of ways. And so if we need to focus on something, then I think part of that is you having enough of a relationship with yourself. And also, you know, friends help. I mean, like I tell people all the time, it's just like, if I really want to know how I'm going to learn something, I usually ask my wife. Like she knows me better than I know myself sometimes. And so I kind of rely on her to say, hey, do you think I'm visual, or do you think I'm, auditory? What do you think? And then of course I like to go play and just, and I think I'm probably more, I don't know. I mean, everyone's different with how they can be able to express those kinds of things, but I'm a pretty free spirit, and I'm a pretty happy dude. I think most people know that I'm like the Santa Claus figure, jolly, and I have a big belly, whether I try to get rid of it or not, and I just enjoy it. I get to go play. Like silence for me is play, and it's not like, oh, I have to be holier than thou. I have to, I can be that stuff, but it's just I'm such in a joyful place when I'm in the presence of God. And so all that contemplation piece for me, and meditation and contemplation piece for me, is just constantly learning to be able to find the presence of God in all circumstances. And for me, that is the joy. That's the fun stuff. That's the stuff I want to do my whole life. And if others want to join me, they can, but I don't care if they join me or not. I'm going to have fun.
Yeah.
But I love it. I can't get enough of it. It is just a life of joy for me to be able to be in the presence of God, even in the midst of pain and sorrow and anger and frustrations. And those are all part of it. And I can't let it cripple me, but I can let it flow through me. And it does go through. It doesn't just stop. It flows through. And half of that time is you just have to practice. No one becomes a professional pianist without practice. Practicing is the beautiful. It's kind of like the Brother Lawrence practicing the presence of God when he's like cooking an omelet and he just gets overwhelmed by it. Like he just has to lay prostrate. Like, okay, I'm gonna lay down. I'm gonna suck a rug really quick here, and I got to tell Jesus how much I love him because I just freaking cooked an omelet. It's just awesome. That's unbelievably wonderful. So the sheer fact, and I heard the wind too, Todd. I heard the wind in your space, and I got to enjoy that moment with you through your microphone, man. I loved it. I absolutely longed for that. I was like, we're kind of outside now. I'm with God and Todd right now. It's just that part was a joy. I didn't hear the church bells. That'd be cool to hear, but.
They were way off in the distance, but Len Sweet talks about that, the theology of play, and I like that. I like that reference because we talk a lot about working with God and like co-creating with God, like all this work. But he says, we should talk about playing with God too, and having fun and enjoying life and the kind of more of a theology of play. And we don't really ever talk about. I do now on purpose when I'm preaching, but I have to force it a lot because I tend to like, let's go and let's work. Like, I feel like, worship is a huddle where we're going to call in the play that we're going to go and we're going to run the play for the week. And then we're going to come back and it should be a play, but it's not. I'm like, okay, we got to go and like make people happy. Damn it. Spread God's grace now.
Better go love people. Yeah.
And so I think like having that idea of playing, like, let's have fun with this, like, especially in contrast to other more conservative churches in the area where I preach in now, there's a big contrast in playing with God. That's a big contrast that can give the church more of its identity, in a way too. So I think that's really cool, DG. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I think, for me, I kind of think about it, and I don't think they're different. I think maybe they feel a little bit different to us. But there's the play side, and there's like the peace side of it too, where, and that's really what kicks in when, sometimes I'm just even too tired to play. Because like I do love play and I play hard, but sometimes sort of my own journey is, I've always been pretty joyful in my spirituality. People used to like ask me what drugs I was taking, because and I'm like, just the Holy Spirit.
It's 10 o'clock in the morning. What's wrong with that?
And that's not a euphemism. It's just, it's just.
Were there any flames above your head, like when you were doing those things?
No, that's back when I had hair, and that would have been dangerous. But yeah, so the play thing is like really important, and fortunately, for me, like that piece of it, I really did find even sort of early on, which probably one of the only reasons I'm still at it. But then, like part of my journey was I had to hold on to the play, but also find sort of the peace side, because even at some point it really is, and I really resonated, Todd, with what you're talking about, like. Get in the huddle and make things happen, and all that kind of stuff. And at some point, for me, like even the play has to drop away. It's really important to put that play in, because I think you're right, DG. The church does not do that enough. And Todd, I think it's so important to bring that back in. But I would push that even additionally and say there's also just this space where we need to kind of let it all drop away. And that's that rest idea from our Lectio discussion. Because even play is fun, but even play, like I get tired. Like when I'm playing with all my kids, like after a while, I'm like, I gotta go sit down. I mean, that was fun. It was like great, you know, but like I gotta rest. So like I can't keep that up either.
Yeah.
Is what I realized for myself, right? Like the play is better because I can do that for a lot longer and it's a lot more fun and it's a lot more joyful. But even that, like I have to get to a point where I finally just say, all right, what I really need to do is like drop everything and just sit for a while. And that's when God really kind of comes in for me and says, all right, I got all of it. Like, I don't want you to do anything. Like nothing. Like, don't even enjoy me. Just like sit there and let me help you.
Right.
You know, and that's real like vulnerable, right? Because like, you know, I got nothing I can put on the table. And that for me, that just like
sitting here naked,
yeah, exactly. It's the take off the clothes thing we talked about right before. It's just
pure vulnerability. Yeah.
And like I got
like, you know, it's funny that you said that because like you're right. I for me, I can't play unless I'm safe.
Yeah.
And so you're right. I think that and maybe it's just I've done it for, you know, years now, that maybe I can't get to a place of play until I have that peace, and then I play, and then I have some more peace. And I think that you're right. I think that it's for me, it does kind of go in that flow, in that wave of play and peace, and it really is almost a rocking motion, a rocking in the arms of Christ motion. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Thank you for saying that. That's good.
Yeah.
I've been thinking, what's been on my mind a lot lately is the scripture about when Jesus says, "Come to me, you know, when you're heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." You know, when you're burdened, and man, that's just not how. Like, even when you read the stories, like the disciples are like hungry and tired. They just got sent out to all the towns. They want to tell Jesus all about their adventures, and then there's all these people, like 5,000 men, right? And they're like, send them away, Jesus. Like, good Lord, send them away. And he, like, they just want to rest, man. Like I feel that. Like I'm like, Jesus, just send these people away for God's sake. And then Jesus is like, no, like feed them. And they're like, oh God, no. Like,
I gotta start the grill now.
Yeah. And like, we hardly have any food, you know, like we hardly have anything. We barely have enough for us. And then Jesus has to teach them something, and all they want to do is rest. So sometimes even the stories in the Bible, like there's a time for that, and we have to live that way, right? We have to be in the moment, and we have to put in extra work when we need to. Right. And we need to work and play when we need to play, and we do need to rest. That's been the big thing as I get older. Like, man, like resting is nice, man. Like, to really be able to rest and to figure out how to do that is huge. And I think that's a really important, it's a really important piece, but it's also very confusing because and that's not my relationship with Jesus. Like, we're hunting buddies and fishing buddies. We don't rest, you know, we don't have nap time. And so I have to find that relationship with Jesus, right? I have to find that relationship with God in where we can rest and where God can give me that rest. I don't sleep well. I don't sleep much. Like, I always have a million things going on. And some of that's my responsibility, you know, too. But I need to find that. And so that's super important. Yeah. Like, that's such an important thing to be talking about right now.
And honestly, that's in my life, where I was practicing that was Compline. I mean, I started having an evening rhythm of just a small prayer time to let go of the day and to welcome the restful night, and to lay down on the, you know, it's like Christ's arm became a pillow, you know, it's just like to have that rhythm that's the time where I started to slowly begin to have that practice, to where then I can be able to apply that rest, whether it's at night or not. It's just, it's almost like my soul and my body and my mind are like, oh yeah. Remember that time when, for the past so many years, you've gone to sleep like that? Like, it's almost like, drinking the glass of warm milk or something. It's like you have this rhythm and you have this practice, and then if you do it enough times, it'll just become just a part of what you do, not just only in that time. You can turn that switch on almost, or God can allow you to be able to turn that switch on.
And that resonates with me a lot, because like as a drummer, right? Like when I learn a song and I get comfortable with the song, like it takes practice. Like I got to learn the song, but then when I learn it and then I'm playing it with other people, and the rhythm is there, like it just plays itself. Like it just plays itself. And I've never been more relaxed, and I've never been, even though I'm hitting the drums like really hard and we're, there's a lot going on, I'm using my body in a lot of ways, but I'm not, it doesn't feel like I'm doing it. I feel like I'm resting while my body's moving, and it's almost doing itself, to where I really separate, almost have like an out of body experience. And I can like look around and it's just happening like on its own. So I think rhythm, that's a huge part. That's something that I'm really missing is the rhythm.
Yeah.
And practice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the two big things, but I think that's huge. Yeah. And I never thought about it that way. I mean, until just now. And that's super helpful to me, because I can relate, because I've experienced that, in another way. But
and that's a great, Todd, that's a great I almost want to call it an illustration, but it's not. It's like a metaphor or something. It's much bigger than just an illustration. For the whole sort of what this podcast is about, right? So much of, we've kind of hinted at it. I think we've said it, but maybe we need to say it again, even more clearly or something. So much of spirituality, and especially the more mystical side of Christianity, the contemplative side of Christianity, that comes out of that monastic movement, is all about rhythms that aid practice, that eventually spill back over from the practice to the rest of those rhythms of life. And it's exactly what you're talking about, but in the inner landscape and the spiritual life, and then that does seep out into the rest of who we are, emotional life and physical well-being. But it's that same kind of thing of learning this, practicing it, developing these rhythms until, it really starts showing up all over the place. It just becomes part of life itself.
So what you're saying is we need to have a new order that is all people in bands, because they have been practicing it this whole time. They've been doing so many band practices, and then they have to put it into shows. And then when they have it, and they've got it, then they're just going to live it out. I'm just like, all right, we need to have an entire order of musicians that are only band members.
That would be awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
But it applies to all art too. It's like,
of course.
I just read a thing about how, like, at first, like, it's really fun to play like music or drums. I think I read it in a drum magazine. It's really fun to play because you don't know what you don't know. So you can just wait, right? And it's super fun. And then it starts, when a lot of people quit is when they know what they don't know, right? Like you realize, oh man, I'm starting to learn things now, and I realize how much I suck, and so then you start to lose, and then you get to a place where you don't know what you know, because you're learning, but you don't realize what you're learning. And so you don't know what you know then. And then when you finally master something, like, that you know that you know how to do it, and then you're confident and you've mastered that skill or whatever. And so there's like a real process in that. I think that all of this stuff is very similar too, Like now I'm realizing how much I don't know this stuff, and it sucks. I just want to plan. Like, I want a personal trainer to be like, okay, do this many reps of this, and do this meditation, and do this and this, and then boom, I'll knock it out, and
you need our Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah. That's what spiritual directors are, right? Like, kind of.
Yeah, I mean they have a specific role in that, but I think you know what DG said about the play, I think that's where the play side comes back in and is really helpful to say. I think we don't share the spiritual disciplines practices side of things with enough playfulness. And that's something, I mean, your comments, DG, are still kind of percolating around with me. I mean, like what you're talking about, instead of just do this, is like, and I think this is sort of the way I approach it, but now this is starting to help me flesh it out and have some words to go with it. Like I really am, I think, a believer in, there are all these different things, play with them a little bit. You know, like, I mean, be consistent and all that stuff we've talked about, but also there's a lot of different disciplines and you could exhaust yourself and find neither play nor peace by, you know, like, I'm gonna keep the full daily office. I'm gonna do examen every night, centering prayer twice a day, Lectio Divina. I'm gonna, you know, like you could stack yourself up with so much spiritual discipline that it just becomes a real burden. You know, instead of, I think the playfulness really is helpful. And that conversation we were having about the back and forth. Wow. I mean, I think we really need to present these things much more as, here are ways to play with God. And some of your language, DG, there is really helpful. And, you know, like try this out and play with this a little bit. And that doesn't mean just be faddish and sort of go, you know, willy-nilly through it. But, you know, but I think a lot of it is, I mean, I've tried some stuff that I don't keep because it didn't really work for me. But instead of being guilty, you know, or like, oh, I didn't do, you know, where I suck or whatever, right? It's just like, I played with that. It was cool. I learned this, but like, that's not going to be in my toolkit. I don't want to do that all the time.
Exactly.
You know,
well, you have a prayer that we were going to talk about today.
If we get to it, and if we don't, I mean, we'll get to all this stuff eventually, but so like, I mean, honestly, I want to keep this conversation going a little bit if we can, where we're going. Maybe we'll do prayer of recollection next time, but
I really like this. Like, this is really what's been on my heart and stuff I've been struggling with. So maybe other people too, you know.
I you know, when you were talking, Todd, about your band, I distinctively remember you talking about one of your band members, and when he was new, you were like, well, he's new. And you're like, he's learning, and now I can just, I mean, you guys y'all just jive together. You are one seamless entity when it comes to the music you guys are playing. And but I remember those moments, I remember those days when, you know, you were like, well, he's just new and he's learning, but he's learning really fast and he's picking it up, and now it's just like you're up there and it's just like, you know, just like you're breathing now. Kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, I remember that he's talking about that, and then of course that metaphor imagery brings back what John and I are always saying is the importance of community and doing all these things in community. Not when you do things independently, don't get me wrong, there's a space for that and there's a place for that too, and that's important to me, and I have to have it for me just because I have turned a little bit more introverted as I get a little bit older, but even introverts can still be able to benefit from community and learn from one another and that stuff. So that's one of the reasons I absolutely want to say how important community is too, to have people come alongside you. So like Todd was saying, spiritual director, like I have never been a spiritual director. Like, well, I don't even know what people think that term is. Because I've just never, and I have people all the time saying, hey, would you do spiritual direction for me? I'm just like, I mean, I guess, sure. Like, what do you want to talk about? You know, I want to, it's kind of like, you know, it's just like almost, the older I get, the more I feel God's calling me to be the grandpa that's sitting on the front porch drinking tea and whittling wood and talking about life, like real life stuff with other people, and doing that in community and doing that in pairs. And I mean, if I could somehow find a job where I could do that in community and better people's lives and better my own life and make the world a better place. Because I think one of the reasons is because I never had that. Like, I've always longed for that kind of like grandfather kind of figure. Because I had one grandfather that we didn't ever live near, and he was he wasn't very much of a talker and couldn't sit in his chair. And if the Dallas Cowboys were on, we had to change channel away from cartoons to the Dallas Cowboys. Kind of a guy. And I love him to death. I mean, I really do. I love him so much. But he just wasn't the kind of, you know, that kind of a guy. And my other grandfather was that guy, but he had already had at least one or two strokes before I was even in the world. And so the only memories I have of him are standing on the back of his wheelchair and rubbing his head. He had a military haircut, and I'd rub his head, and he would hand me Tums as candy. And that's the memories I have of my grandfather, one of my grandfathers. And so to this day, like, head oil brings back all these memories of a kid. And it's probably the reason I have horrible, you know, heartburn. It's because I based out my stomach a long time ago. Eating Tums as candy.
Thanks, Grandpa. Yeah,
exactly. But I think the world's kind of longing for that. I think they're longing for the grandma and the grandpa and sit on the front porch in the swing, and they're longing for sitting down and eating dinner as a, you know, in a family atmosphere that we don't have those in the world right now. And I think that we're all kind of longing for that kind of level of connection that, you know, we see it in movies and like, it's all fiction. You know, that can't really happen. That's fiction. And I've always longed for that kind of loving relationship. So I just tell people, like, if that's what you want in a spiritual director, then yeah, I'll do it, but don't pay me. I just want to do that. You know, I want to live my life as an example in some small way. That others would want to, but I see it as Jesus. I mean, Jesus did that too. I see that Jesus is walking and talking, and he's like, hey, I'm going to go about my Father's business, and you're welcome to join me if you want to. And by the way, you know, it is okay for people to give you money. I'm just not going to give them an invoice for it. Like, if you want to give me money so I can eat, okay, that's great. I appreciate that so much. But I can't give you an invoice if you're asking for the blessing of God. Like, that's not something I can ever do. But you're right. I think that I think that a spiritual director and even having just even a counselor in some cases to be able to help you with, you know, what are your triggers, and just to kind of help you think through how you think and how you live your life and how you could be able to be molded here and there. And, you know, I would, it's funny, as spiritual director, it's funny you said that, because I've actually had just lately several people asking me to do that. I'm like, okay, I don't even know what, and some people were like, well, yes, my child. I'm like, huh? What are you talking about? Like,
I think that there's a huge need because I think there's a way bigger need for that than what we realize right now, because of two things. Well, like first of all, when you talk to a therapist, which is what I've been doing lately every week, and I exercise like my emotional and my emotional muscles, right? And I build up my emotional muscles, my emotional boundaries, talk about where things come from, right? And I'm working out my emotions in a lot of ways. Like you know, I physically work out on my own, and then you have like somebody helping you emotionally work out in a way and making me stronger. It helps. It makes me stronger emotionally. Stuff doesn't bother me the same. I work through things. I navigate things better. Like, I know what's going on more than I did before. So it's super, super good for me and helpful. But physical and emotional are great. But what are we doing? And I don't think in church we're doing a very good job of helping people navigate the spiritual waters. And because we don't really talk about spiritual disciplines, and we don't really talk about those things. And I think a spiritual director could do that. I was talking with a friend of mine who's a campus minister, and she's younger, and she wants to help people that are dealing with a lot of trauma and different things like that. She has really good ideas and really good plans on how to do that, like really good. And she has like a curriculum, and she's like super smart, and she has all these ideas. And the first thing that came to my mind when I was talking to her about this was, man, like what if, and I need to talk to her about it. I will talk to her about it, but I didn't say this out loud, but my thought was, what if you had like a spiritual director involved in that, and you had some spiritual practices to go along with some of these other things to cope with some of this trauma? Because she's brilliant. She's brilliant in physical and emotional stuff, you know, but what occurred to me, which I was super proud of, because I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about spiritual stuff. Good job. Gold star, Todd. And but that's what the first thing I thought of was, man, like, and maybe like I could help her do that. Maybe I could help her find how to incorporate some of those spiritual things, because that's super important. And that's what gives me peace in a different way. Doing those things, fasting and meditating, and, you know, even just reading and journaling, and those things like give me peace in a way that's totally different from the way I journal emotionally, where I just write all my feelings down. Like, it's not about feelings. Feelings might be a part of it, but it's about, okay, how am I going to really process this on a level of making things work better and changing my story? You know, emotions, changing your story is not emotional. Changing your story uses your emotions, but the emotions are the fuel of that story, right? Changing your story is very spiritual. Like if you think something's going on, you tell yourself that, then you live into that story, and you end up creating the very things you're most afraid of. You know, that's not just emotions. There's a lot more to that than emotional. And I think spiritual direction can be a huge piece of really filling in those gaps. As therapy and things like that becomes more accepted, I think that there's still going to be a missing piece there, which is our spiritual health.
Yeah, absolutely, Todd. I mean, what you say resonates very much, not just with spiritual direction, which is a piece of that. I mean, one of these days we'll get around to looking specifically at centering prayer, that particular practice of silence.
Yes.
And the process itself is really simple, and so it's easy to get into it. But there's a lot of content sort of around it, which I love, because like I can introduce a group, and in fact, I facilitate a weekly group of centering prayer, and like new people, I can get them into the practice quick. You know, it's fast. There's like 4 guidelines go. But then like I've read, I mean, countless books sort of exploring the little nooks and crannies of it. And part of that is Thomas Keating, who's one of the great sort of godfathers of the movement. He talks, Todd, about exactly what you're talking about. He has a real, he's passed away not all that long ago, but he has a real psychological bent that complements his spirituality. And he talks a lot about, his language tends to be the emotional programs for happiness. Many of them we learn in childhood, but he uses that language of these tapes that play in our head, right? Or the story that we repeat in our thoughts because we're letting our thoughts have too much power. And a couple of weeks ago, we had sort of started to go down that road toward thoughts. And what we really need, psychology can't do all the work, because psychology teaches you to engage those thoughts and sort of mull through them for insight, which is helpful and good. But his argument is, but that's not enough. It's not because you're still like basically strengthening those thought patterns. Even if you sort of heal from them a little bit, like you're still engaging them. And so that what the spiritual work does is basically it changes the script, it changes the storyline. It helps you to learn to let that go. It stops that one story and that one tape from playing again and again, and introduces other stories and other recordings that's what your mind starts to engage, and which is huge. And so, yeah, Todd, I mean, you're exactly right. Your sense of how spirituality complements those other things, and the difference in spiritual work compared to psychological work or other forms of health, I mean, are really solid. And there's lots and lots of track record out there at this point to, I mean, just like spell that out and flesh that out for people. And I also think it's exciting because some people have never, you know, for me, that's like a whole new front door into spirituality for people that have not, you know, never found any articulation of church very engaging. But they're really kind of interested in that side of who they are and what God might do. And I think it's just a tremendous front door for people, where without all the other trappings that we've tied, you know, to how we follow Jesus today through the institutional church, you know, we can really like jump through a lot of that and talk about, okay, here's, you know, here's what we can also do with it, and here's what makes a difference. And I realize I'm bathed in sunlight. I should probably try to shift there. That's better. I'm glowing. I'm glowing when I talk about spiritual things.
I bet you there's like a rhythm even that you could create to where you do something like I go for a run, right? And then I talk to a therapist, or I journal about stuff that comes up on that run. Because a lot of my emotions come up on a run. And when I'm done, if I were to sit down and journal and think about things emotionally, right? And flesh out, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Blah, blah, blah. And then meditate or do something spiritual, right? To process those feelings and to create different, right? Like my therapist talks about things in your brain, like you have patterns in your brain as you get used to thinking about certain things, and you have destructive patterns that you have to just redo. You have to create new patterns, new ways of thinking about something, you know, positive self-talk and all that stuff, which I'm very like it's so hard. My poor therapist, man, she earns her money in that hour. Because I am positive self-talk averse. Like I feel so silly, like telling myself positive things because there's a lot of reasons for that. But she's right. Like when I do that, or when other people tell me things, I heard last week that it takes 12 affirmations to counteract one criticism. When somebody, so if you're not giving yourself positive self-talk and positive affirmations, you better have a lot of friends, and they better be really positive, because you're going to need the amount of criticism I get, man. There's not enough friends in the world that's going to be able to give me 12 like, for every one. And so I need to help them out, right? And I need to be doing some of that work myself, and that makes me feel guilty enough, right, to actually do the work and give myself positive self-talk. I just need that motivation, you know, to do that, because it doesn't feel silly if I'm helping my friends out, right?
Right.
So that changes the way I see it. But that was a spiritual moment and experience to help me see it that way. So now that changes my whole framework, which allows me to do the thing I felt silly about. Now I feel helpful in doing it, and now it's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah. Right. All right. So for the closing prayer, I've picked one by a contemporary author, Peter Traben Haas. He a lot of things published with Paraclete Press. Nobody's found Paraclete Press. They just do some amazing things that no other Christian publishing house publishes. And there's actually an intentional community at the center of Paraclete Press, which is kind of cool. And he also does a lot with centering prayer. And so this is a prayer from a resource he created, kind of a one-year companion on going deeper into the love of God. And so we'll close with this prayer. The prayer is called Eternal Light of Attention, and that's how it begins. That's his address to God in this prayer, which is kind of interesting. So let's pray this. Eternal light of attention, resting in you, I remember myself, and in so doing, I remember you. In this busy world, it is easy to forget. Today, I wish to rise in remembrance, receiving knowledge and wisdom in my heart. Although there appear to be many paths for my life, I feel drawn to this path of quietness in gentleness and surrender. Solitary in silence, you kiss my soul, and I feel more alive. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Thank y'all. Thank you so much.
See you next time.